Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld, and today we're going to take a look at some of my thoughts on the new Final Stand DLC. Just bear in mind though, this video will be focused mainly on the PS4 version of the game, because even though I own and play BF4 on PC, I don't actually have premium for that platform. But anyway, Final Stand has been out for about a week now for premium members, and I think we've all started to get a good impression of what the DLC is all about. For those of you without premium though, if you're still interested in playing Final Stand, you'll be able to pick it up in a little less than a week on December the 2nd. Final Stand features 4 new snow-themed maps and new unlocks like the DS3 decoy target detector and of course the now infamous spider bow. As well as new gear, this DLC also features new vehicles like the snowmobile and hover tank, as well as new pickup weapons like the Rorsch railgun and the X1 drone. Now, probably the first thing I've noticed about this DLC is the fact that a lot less people have been playing it initially compared to previous DLCs. This has probably got a lot to do with the fact that there's been so many great games come out in the last few weeks, including Advanced Warfare, Far Cry 4 and the remastered port of GTA 5. In the first few days, it was easy enough to find servers on just about any Final Stand map and game mode, but now, a little more than a week on, pretty much everything seems to be dying off except Conquest large servers. The maps in this DLC are very big, and although I enjoy the long-range gunfights, the traditionally faster and more aggressive game modes tend to be a bit too slow on these maps, and the games tend to run a lot longer than normal. Now, as for Conquest Large, it also suffers from the same issues, but I guess you don't notice it as much because Conquest tends to be slower paced to begin with. You really need to use vehicles to travel between objectives, because in addition to the massive distances you'll need to cover on foot, running around on these new maps makes you a prime target for snipers. And speaking of snipers, there's a lot of them, to the extent that it actually starts to get annoying. As well as snipers, there's a fair share of DMR guys, so if you're not using one of these weapons too, or at least one of the long-range ARs, then you're probably going to find that your KD isn't quite as good as it normally would be. Vehicles are another huge issue for infantry players on the new maps, and in a lot of ways it reminds me of trying to play infantry on Silk Road or Golmud. Once you realise this, you'll realise that all of the maps don't seem so big anymore, considering you can't safely run around on foot, and if like me you're not a vehicle player, you may end up getting a little bit frustrated. For those of you who do like vehicles though, well, the snowmobile is awesome, but the hover tank on the other hand, well, it's fun, but I think it's probably not as good as the normal tanks. It doesn't have a traversing turret, so technically it's actually a self-propelled gun, not a tank, and because of this, it's a little bit clunky to aim until you get used to how it works. Now, to help balance out some of the vehicle spam on these maps, one of the great new features of Final Stand is the new Rorsch railgun pickup weapon. This gun has a high-powered scope and it takes a second or two to charge after you pull the trigger, but at long range it absolutely destroys infantry and can even take out light-skinned vehicles and helicopters too. The other pickup weapon in this DLC is the flying X1 drone, or as I like to call it, the Swirly, because it's halfway between an SUAV and the Roar. This thing is operated like a MAV, and it's pretty small and pretty fast, but it doesn't seem to do a whole lot of damage, and of course leaves you defenseless to anyone who comes across you while controlling it. The flagship features of any new DLC though are always the player unlocks, and unfortunately Final Stand is a bit light in that department. The only new weapon in Final Stand is the spider bow, which many people still don't have yet because it's unlocked after grinding out the Phantom program assignments. The DS3 decoy is another pretty useless gadget except for trolling, because it alerts enemies that someone is in the area, even if it does distract them for a little while. The target detector attachment for the DMRs and carbines, on the other hand, is an amazing gadget that automatically spots enemies when you aim down sights, and unlike the spot button, you can use it over and over again limitlessly. So to wrap up, all in all, Final Stand isn't a terrible DLC, but I'm not sure I'd go as far as to call it one of the best. I really can't see most of these maps staying populated past the first month or so, because they're just so slow that even a round or two is enough to get boring. Don't get me wrong, the maps look great and they're great for sniping, but if you take a look at populated servers, it always tends to be the close range maps that end up being more popular. Also, the scale of some of these maps is probably a little too much for the PS4 to handle, and although as a PS4 player you get used to the frame drops during Levolution, on maps like Giants for example, the frame drop happens way too often. I guess all I can say to sum up this DLC is that it's been fun for a week or so, but I personally can't see myself playing it heaps in the future. It's a bit like Naval Strike for me. I love the unique map design, and I especially love the Rush game mode, but because there just aren't that many populated Rush servers, I never feel like I want to play it. Hopefully come December 2, when everyone else gets access to Final Stand, some of the other game modes might pick up a little. Until then though, I'll probably be back on Vanilla and Second Assault because Final Stand has been good for a change, but it unfortunately hasn't won me over. But anyway guys, that just about wraps it up, so let me know what you think of Final Stand in the comment section below. As always, if you like what you see, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and if you haven't already, please check out all my other Battlefield 4 videos. I've got them all linked in a playlist in the description below. But until next time, see you later and have a good one.